everyone, and welcome to part 2 of my Dorothy Stratten video. In this video, we'll explore the peak of her fame and how tragically it ended when she had so much potential ahead of her. Let's take a look at what happened. She did. So while she's off promoting her movies and she's, making money at the Playboy Club, Paul Snider actually came up with a really good idea, and it was an idea for male dancers to take off their shirts and dance erotically like female dancers do. He thought there was a market for this, and he was right, because this was and would have eventually become the Chippendale dancers. This was his idea. But he got some pretty good and high-end investors to invest in this idea. But the sad thing is that as soon as these investors came on and started promoting it, they cut him out. So this must have really pissed him off, because it seemed to him like first he has this great idea with Dorothy, discovering this diamond in the rough Dorothy. And then his next big idea gets stolen right out from under him. So he's thinking, this Hollywood place sucks, okay? What the actual hell? So I'm going to read a little bit in my book about this. The Chippendale dancers were born. The act was sheer genius, and it's hard to believe that the notion had not been exploited earlier. Paul recognized that women had sexual appetites just as much as men, and yet there were precious few outlets other than personal relationships that catered to those needs. The act and the club, the Chippendale Club, showcased them as an instant success. But due to poor business skills, Paul found himself on the outside looking in when his investment partners cut him out completely. So the clock began to count down in Paul's head. He was back to exploiting Dorothy, or clinging on to Dorothy, I should say, as his only means of getting ahead. So they rented a part of a house off the 405 freeway. They didn't live in all of it. They lived in the downstairs section. So I'm sure Dorothy could have afforded better, but, this is where they chose to live. San Fernando Valley. Not Beverly Hills or Hollywood Hills or Santa Monica, but San Fernando Valley. It was around this time when Dorothy managed to get away from Mr. Goodbar over there in their freeway shack and sneak off to the mansion by herself. She met the young and upcoming director, Peter Bogdanovich. He'd made a huge splash with the hauntingly poignant film, The Last Picture Show. He had just come off of a long-term relationship, I think it was a 6-year relationship, with the star of that movie, Sybil Shepherd, who was a superstar, one of the very first superstar models. And when he saw Dorothy at the mansion, he fell for her hard. There was an innocence about her, and plus it came out later that Mr. Bogdanovich liked very, very young girls. Dorothy was only, I think, 19 at the time, so yeah. He made a beeline for her, and he treated her beautifully. She fell for him immediately. So it's a problem because they wanted to be together, but she was married, and that Snider guy, that's a problem. So in order to spend time with his new love, he cast her in his current film, which was called They All Laughed. She was cast opposite John Ritter, who was on the show Three's Company. He made a lot of money on that show, and after the show was canceled, he was looking for a career in movies, and Peter Bogdanovich thought he would make a good romantic lead, so he cast him in They All Laughed opposite his girlfriend, Dorothy Stratten. So now Dorothy Stratten had to be on the set all day and sometimes part of the night. What to do? Paul Snider couldn't complain because she was in a movie, and it wasn't just a bit part. It was an A-list movie with one of the hottest directors at the time, and And she wasn't a bit player, she was the co-star. So, yeah. He really couldn't say much about that. So they fell more and more in love. Someone gave Dorothy a puppy, and one day she came home from filming, and the puppy was dead. And she always believed that Paul Snider had killed that puppy because he accused her of loving it more than she loved him. What kind of sick person does that? Anyway, so her Centerfold came out, and of course everybody knew who she was after that. She was Centerfold of the Year also, and she became famous because that Centerfold really got people's attention. And the reason I say this is because I actually remember when that Centerfold came out. I didn't pay much attention to Playboy centerfolds, but for some reason this got everyone talking. Everyone said, oh, look, she's the new Marilyn. She looks so innocent. She's beautiful, and she really stood out amongst centerfolds. So here she is. She's famous now. She's in the elite of elite at the Playboy Mansion, and she's making a movie with the hottest director, and yet she's still tethered to this small town pimp who won't let her go. He began working on a little project of his own in the garage, an invention that he thought for sure would make him rich. And I'm going to read a little bit about this from my book. He began feverishly working in the garage of their home. It was a modified workbench equipped with leather straps with the ability to be adjusted to all sorts of bizarre sex positions. He hoped to sell this invention to the Pleasure Chest, a kinky and sex and bondage shop on La Brea Avenue in West Hollywood. I think it might be still there. Then mass-produced and market it to the sex industry. The Pleasure Chest said, thanks, but no thanks. Apparently, the device was too BKT, even for their standards. Another failed venture. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Paul kept the prototype anyway. So Dorothy was away in New York, and of course, filming for They All Laugh, and having fun with her cast members, and having fun with her new boyfriend, Peter Bogdanovich. And there was nothing Paul could do about it. He was stuck in LA working on his sexual device, if that's what you want to call it. He got a new license plate in 1980, and it said Star 80. And this was in reference to Dorothy, and he was sure that that was the year that she was going to be a big star, Star 80. So they made a movie about Dorothy, and they called it Star 80. It starred Mariel Hemingway. And so, yeah, that's a good movie. Eric Roberts played Paul Snider to perfection. It was really good in that movie. Okay, so she went back to Vancouver briefly because she wanted to start severing ties with Paul. And one of the things she did was to close their joint bank account. And I don't know, this angered Paul. He ran back to Vancouver, and she was staying with her family, and he tried to, talk her out of whatever she was planning, and he took her out to a club. He put her on display, and he charged $1 for anybody who wanted to her autograph. And so this was kind of the final straw for Dorothy. And when she got back to Los Angeles, she moved out of their house, their little rented house thing, and in with Peter Bogdanovich. And she began living openly with Peter Bogdanovich. And she initiated divorce proceedings. So I'm going to read a little bit in my book. Dorothy and Bogdanovich had been wrapping up final scenes for They All Laughed in New York in the summer of 1980. They returned home in late July. Paul had bought a gun, waited all night in the shrubbery of Bogdanovich's yard, for the couple to return so that he could kill them both. Fortunately for Bogdanovich, he got the day wrong. The turn of fate saved Peter's life. It simply delayed the inevitable for Dorothy. On the morning of August 14th, Dorothy told Peter that she was going to see her attorney and then go to a photo shoot at the mansion afterwards. She lied. Louise, Dorothy's little sister, was visiting her and wanted to tag along. Dorothy said okay, and the two of them got into the car and left. In reality, to make a final break with the psycho. She had $1,000 in an envelope that she hoped would buy her peace and separation from her tormentor. En route, she changed her mind about taking Louise with her and dropped her off at the beach instead. Would Paul have carried out his sick plan if Louise had gone that afternoon? Would both of them be dead today? Or would he just have set it aside for another time? We'll never know. So we have a little bit of an idea as to what Dorothy's final hours were like, and they were horrific. I'm going to read this section in my book. Dorothy arrived at Paul's house at around 12 p.m. What transpired over the next few hours will never be known. Detectives were only able to piece together a likely scenario. At some point, Snider snapped and took her hostage. He brutalized, beat, and raped her repeatedly. He then put a shotgun to her cheek and blew her face away. The tip of her index finger was blown off when she put her hand up to defend herself. No one knows for sure if she was alive or dead when he strapped and taped her to the sex bench, where he proceeded to brutalize her in unspeakable ways. His bloody handprints were tattooed on her buttocks. He even tore out a chunk of her beautiful hair, as it was still clutched in his fist when his body was found. Then he took her off the bench, tossed her lifeless body onto the bed, and killed himself. He had fallen on the gun. The bullet had left his right eye dangling in its socket. Good riddance. JFC. Well, the aftermath was a shit show all around. Hugh Hefner and Peter Bogdanovich went at each other publicly, privately, in court, out of court. Everybody sued everybody. Bogdanovich talked Dorothy's mother into suing Hefner for, I don't know what, exploiting her daughter, I guess. And Hefner and the Bogdanovich ended up writing a book called The Killing of the Unicorn, which actually was pretty well received. It was a good book for what it was. But he kind of went crazy. He still had to edit They All Laugh. And apparently when he was in the process of editing that film and just seeing Dorothy over and over again on celluloid, and knowing that that was the last time he would ever see her, or anybody would ever see her, he went a little nuts. And he decided that he didn't really want to be without a Dorothy-esque person in his life. So he ended up marrying the little sister, Louise Stratten. And she was young. I mean, she was, I think, 16 at the time. He didn't marry her until 4 years after Dorothy, thank God. After Dorothy had died, because I think she was only 12 when Dorothy died. Yeah, I think she was 16 when he married her. Shockingly, the marriage lasted longer than most people thought it would last, but it eventually did dissolve. Dorothy's buried at Pierce Brothers Memorial Cemetery, and it's interesting. She has a Hemingway connection in that Muriel Hemingway would play her in Star 80. But before all that, the epitaph that they chose for her grave was a quote from A Farewell to Arms, Hemingway's novel. And it said, "If people bring so much courage to this world, the world has to kill them, to break them. So of course it kills them. It kills the very good and the very gentle and the very brave impartially. If you are none of these, you can be sure it will kill you too. But there will be no special hurry." I thought that was one of the most poignant epitaphs I'd read, especially considering what happened to Dorothy. So there you have it, our tragic Hollywood star of the week, Dorothy Stratten, R.I.P. All right, thank you very much. If you like my content, please like and subscribe, and check out my books, Tragic Hollywood, Beautiful, Glamorous, and Dead. The story of Dorothy Stratten is in here. Tragic Hollywood, Beautiful, Glamorous, and Still Dead, and my novel, Goodbye, Angel, Goodbye, if you like noir, mystery, thrillers. Thank you very much, and I will see you next week.